When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my Lord Thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul.
Though Satan should buffet, though trials should come, let this blessed assurance control, that Christ has regarded my helpless estate, and hath shed His own blood for my soul.
It is well with my soul.
With my soul, it is well
with my soul. It is well with my soul.
More than ever, people are struggling with their mental health, and as the church, we have a great opportunity to step up and offer support to those in our fellowships and communities who would really benefit from knowing that they're not alone in this. Renew Wellbeing is a charity that helps churches to set up simple, safe, sustainable spaces where it's okay not to be okay. This isn't about churches trying to become mental health experts, but rather using our resources and the things we do well to offer some basic support and provide an environment that promotes well-being. The Renew Wellbeing model is based around 3 Ps: being prayerful, being present, and being in partnership. Being prayerful is about having good prayer practices of our own and then praying alongside others, demonstrating what it means to be a people of prayer. This can be done by creating a quiet area that can be used for private prayer and reflection whenever the space is open, but then at set times inviting those who want to join in a time of simple corporate prayer. We have 3 prayer rhythms that we offer as a resource. Each prayer is made up of short phrases, either based on scripture, the Lord's Prayer, or the Prayer of Examine. These are read by whoever's leading, and in between space is given for others to say a word or a sentence, adding their own prayers. This can be done out loud or just quietly to themselves. Each rhythm has been designed with the most vulnerable in mind, and by using the same rhythm each session, people know what to expect, which makes it less threatening. There is no expectation that people have to join in with the prayer times, but by modelling prayer in a way that makes it accessible for everyone, we've found many using the Renew spaces have taken the opportunity to engage. Being present is exactly that. Being there with people, journeying with them, lending a listening ear when appropriate, but mainly just turning up and being available. Offering company and a chat, or sharing hobbies and activities that anyone can join in with. Renew spaces are places of welcome and inclusion. It's all about doing things together, whether that's just doing an activity you love in the company of others, showing someone else how to do your hobby, or maybe learning a new skill or hobby from someone else. It really is that simple. The hard part is often trying not to overcomplicate it. It's organic, it will evolve and develop around those who are using the space. Here are a few examples of some hobbies that people have done in some other Renew spaces. Being in partnership. Within the charity, we promote the 5 ways to well-being. These are things that were identified as being beneficial to people's mental and emotional health by the New Economics Foundation and provide a common language with other mental health services. We encourage churches to find out who their local mental health links are in the area, so that if someone does come to a session needing more help, we can support them in accessing that. And so that the church can help take the pressure off other services by providing low-level, constant support that GPs and other services can signpost people to. This is often called social prescribing. For example, if someone is depressed because they're on their own all the time, we can provide a space where they're invited to come and meet others. The Renew charity is also a partnership across all the Renew spaces. Many even describe it as a family. We provide training, resources and ongoing support. We also work closely with Sanctuaries Ministry UK, who have some great theological resources which they kindly make available to any churches who host a Renew space.
I worked, I've got my husband here and 3 kids and was working full time and then part of the church, always been part of the church, brought up in a brethren household where busyness was next to godliness. And so I busied myself around the kingdom of God and doing stuff for God and kind of like, was he pleased with me yet? Are you pleased with me yet? And that's why I really love that meditation this morning. His delight is already on me. I didn't really know that then. So about 10, 12 years ago, I found my cup, which was always, I like this kind of image of my life like a cup. My cup, which was always full to the brim, overflowing. I mean, I loved teaching. I was a primary school teacher whose motto was every child has a right to a standing ovation. So I did like, shows, and it was just that, living it large, loved it all. So I wasn't like a depressive sort of a person. So I was very surprised when 12 years ago, my cup just emptied overnight. There were some signs, and I didn't spot them. I lost my voice. I kept going back to teaching, and I was still, like when you manage and you think, oh, I'll be fine. And I got a little tambourine and I'd shake it, and all these 5-year-olds would come running like some sort of weird Pied Piper. And then even with the church, it was like, well, I can still manage. I can pray for people in a whisper. And I didn't listen to my body at all. And so I found myself having a massive burnout. I mean, some of you will have experienced this, but I didn't spot it coming. I wasn't really looking after myself very well. So when I'm talking about well-being, I have become much more interested in the whole subject. But for me, my particular interest was my own life. I didn't live with a lot of well-being. I don't think I thought about it very much. And it wasn't until I was not being well that well-being became important to me. Now, please don't hear me wrong. I am not saying that mental ill health is people's own fault. There are loads and loads of reasons why people become ill. For me, it was my own fault. I basically broke myself. I didn't look after myself well. And when talking to a load of Christian leaders here, so just knowing that, very often we're the last people who get pastored by ourselves. So I want to come from the angle of telling you my story so that it doesn't become your story, really. This whole charity was set up around the fact that I didn't look after myself well enough, and I needed people to help me to do it. So it showed itself in the fact that I was in the kitchen one day and trying to think what to have for tea. So I'd made 100 decisions that day about what to do in the church. We're part of a Baptist church here that my husband and I were part of leading, and things I've been doing at work. And then I suddenly couldn't think what to have for tea, and it was like the last straw. And I can remember sliding down the work surface, sitting on the kitchen floor, and I couldn't stop crying. And I thought, oh dear, that's not a very good response to not being able to think of what to have for tea. And it was a shock to me because I'd always been one of these relentlessly positive Christians, like count your blessings sort of people. I've been brought up to be that. And I think also I'm not going to labor the point, but being a woman in ministry from a brethren background didn't help, because I was constantly trying to prove that I could do it all. I could keep a good home, a nice family, and do some leading, and it would all be fine. So to fall apart felt like, oh, well, that's why they told me I couldn't lead. So all of that, there were layer upon layer of shame, to be honest. I took to my bed, and I must admit, I didn't come out of it very much for about 3 months. When I look back on it now, I can't quite believe how quickly the energy drained out of my body when I gave into it. It was like the minute I listened to myself, there were years of not having looked after myself well. The only thing, this is how I knew how unwell I was. The only thing I could do was watch reruns of Dallas. I mean, go to the doctor and say, I think I might be mentally ill. I should have gone then. But because I was a Christian and a leader, I thought, well, I must be able to do this. I must be able to pull myself together. It must be me. I must pray more. Maybe I could, get more people to pray for me. I had a wonderful GP who never said breakdown to me. If he had said breakdown, I probably wouldn't have gone back. He said, you've emptied your deposit account and your current account, and from now on, I just want you to put your energy into your deposit account. So he signed me off for weeks and weeks and weeks at a time. Now, I'd never had a day off in 20 years of teaching. I'd mostly, apart from having babies, I haven't taken time off. So I was, proper workaholic. And it took me a good 3 months to go, right, now I feel well enough to go back. But you know what I did? I went back to exactly the way I was living before, and then I had another breakdown. It sounds so silly now when I say it, but I thought, I've had a proper rest now. Now I can manage, like it was all down to me. It took the best part of a year for me to finally realize that all the things that had brought me life, all the things that I was doing as a Christian and as a leader, it's almost like I was self-medicating with busyness. It's almost like I didn't know who Ruth was. I didn't know I was already loved. There was a very dark moment. I can't say I had loads of wonderful times with God and it was all glorious. It wasn't. I felt bad. I felt guilty. I felt shame. I didn't really want to tell anyone what was going on in my head because that felt like, well, this shouldn't be happening. I'm a Christian. And I'd absented myself from the very places that would have brought me life. And the reason was church was a bit of a nightmare, if I'm honest, because I had a lovely, lovely church that loved me dearly. I went on to become their minister, actually, and they're a lovely bunch, but they just wanted me to be better because me not being well was a bit of a panic for them. So there was lots of what I call guerrilla praying. Do you know this? You know, it's like, I haven't asked you to pray for me, but it's happening again. And there was this kind of, oh, stop patting me, I'm not a dog. In fact, somebody made me a sign that actually said that. And it was the only way I could be there, was like, don't pat me, I'm not a dog. But they meant well, and we talk about it now and we laugh, but actually it meant I couldn't be there. I became one of the shadow people, you know, the people who stay in the car park until it's started and they leave before the end. I was one of those people. For a year, if I ever did get to church, it was because I knew I needed the presence of God. I knew that where normally I had been able to encounter him, I couldn't, and I knew I needed God's people, but I found it a really difficult place to be because we had no language for people not to be okay and still to be part of us. I found lots of shadow people in the car park. I found people who were suffering long-term loss and grief, people with diagnosis of very serious mental ill health. I found people who had anxiety disorders. And I didn't find people who really needed to be there. I didn't find the people in our community who were struggling with their mental and emotional health batting at our doors to come and be part of our community because it was too hard to access family and be part of church when you're not feeling great. Now, it sounds like I'm slagging off church. Just hang on in there because I'm not. Because I did find habits and wonderful kind of slow, still, contemplative practices that I had never been taught. I don't know about you, but baby went out with the bathwater for a lot of nonconformists, and I didn't know about rhythms and habits of prayer like Naomi's led us in today. I didn't have a daily habit with the Psalms until I wasn't well, and then the Psalms became rooms in which I could find my soul. I didn't have a habit of sort of a rhythm of prayer, of a liturgy of prayer. I thought maybe, you know, people who had to repeat words that somebody else had were somehow not having a good relationship with God, and that extemporary prayer was all we needed. But I didn't have any words when I wasn't well. And so I had to dip in to a little bit of liturgy, the Lord's Prayer, the examen at the end of the day. And then what I do in the morning, and I'm going to just do this with you now, every single morning, and this was a habit that I started then, and I'd have to tell you, it's probably the most life-changing habit, and it's dead simple. I'll tell you what it is, right? You ready? Take your first cup. You might want to do this with me. Hold this cup. Hold onto the cup in both hands. Imagine this is your first cuppa in the morning. Find a nice place to sit and then drink your entire drink before you go and start your day. Like, don't just do it on the hop. Sit still until your entire drink is gone. And do you know what will happen? The world still spins on its axis and you didn't do it. And that is an act of warfare for me. It's to say to the enemy who wants me to think I am God, there is a God and it isn't me. I'm going to sit here. Then hold your cup in both hands. This image for me is what well-being looks like. This cup is my life, whatever is in it, whether it is joy or sorrow or both, which is very often. If it's empty or it's full, it is held in the hands of the one who's got me, he knows me, he made me. And that image there, that is well-being for me. It isn't whether I am being well. It's not even about the contents of the cup. It is about the hands that hold it. And that image, you can not hold your cup if that doesn't help. That little practice of meditating on the word is what has held me. So I would then take this cup when I've drunk everything that's in it. And I'll tell you what, that in itself is easier said than done. But you get your cup of tea, you get halfway through, and then you think, no, seriously, I've got really important things to do. I dare you to sit still for the entire length of a cup of tea in the morning and just see what happens. It stills my soul to stay for the whole drink. If I have a really busy day, I choose a bigger cup because it means I'm going to have to sit still for longer at the start of the day. And then when the cup is empty, I begin to fill it with the meditation of the day. So if you want to join me just for a moment, holding the cup again, empty this time, coming to him empty, I would then take today's meditation, and we hold the meditation for a whole week. We take a phrase from a psalm. The reason I do that is I couldn't hold a whole psalm. I couldn't remember what I'd just read when I wasn't well. I could hold a phrase of about 5 syllables. And so we've been doing that ever since. And the phrase today is, of course, that he delights. The Lord delights in you. The Lord delights in his people. So I take that phrase and I just go over and over and over it. I know, I'm sorry, I know you're all trained, you're ministers, so you know what meditation is, but do you do it? Do you? Or do you write a sermon in your head? Be honest. Do you actually just take that phrase and chew it and chew it and chew it? If you're good at worrying, you will be good at meditating because it's just negative meditation. So take a phrase and fill your cup with it, literally, like, even if it helps to write it out and stick it in. I take my journal every day and I write the phrase at the top of the page because I've forgotten halfway through the day. What am I filling my mind with today? What is good and true today? And so that one simple habit of taking this phrase, the phrase for the week, and then once I've filled my cup with it, every time I pick up a cup, and maybe this is just me, but I do have quite a few cuppers in the day. Every time I pick up a cup, it reminds me, hang on a minute, what's the meditation today? What is good and true? And what happened as I began to do that was I realized I was not at the mercy of every thought that ran through my head. I could choose to think of something good and true and let the other thoughts orbit around it. So today I'm worrying about one of my children, but I know that he delights in us. So he must delight in them too. And so I don't stop, it's not mind control, but I let that child orbit around this one thing that is good and true. It began to settle my soul. It began to bring me back to life and health. And I began to share that habit with other people. So we called it the Cup Group. You might have come across a book called Joyce Rupp, RUPP, called The Cup of Our Life. This was inspirational to me. If you've not seen it, it's a 6-week course in inner habits. And I began to talk to these shadow people, the people I'd met in the car park, the people who were not well. I realized there was a massive problem with mental and emotional health, and I hadn't even spotted it. And those were the people who I said, do you want to come and do this cup meditation? I haven't got anything else for you, but this works. A friend of mine who was a lifeguard had said, if you go to a drowning person, take something that floats or they'll pull you under. And so I knew I couldn't deal with other people's mental and emotional health, but I did have something that floated. I did have meditating on the Psalms. So we'd have this group in my house and we'd sit with our cup and we'd drink our drink, have a chat. And then when the drink was gone, we would just meditate on the Psalm. That was it. I'd read the whole Psalm and then we'd meditate on the phrase. Do you know, it was remarkable. Years and years of trying to fix people and get people saved and sorted just melted away with my own breakdown. And into that space, God got hold of me again and said, Ruth, I couldn't love you anymore. I'll never love you any less. Let's do this together. And so people who were struggling with like long-term loss and grief with their mental and emotional health, going through cancer treatments, where they might have gone to the margins of what we normally did as church, found peace. Our cup groups multiplied. Various homes where we were having cup group going on in different homes where literally all we were doing was meditating on a phrase. And things began to happen. I went to this one house and by this time I fast forward my own story. If you want the rest of my story, you can buy the book. I can't believe I just said that. That's hilarious. But there is actually a book coming out in January called Slow Down, Show Up and Pray, which pulls all this together, because it was a weird journey from coming out of a breakdown to come out of teaching and into being a minister. I mean, that's what was God up to there. But I ended up being the full-time leader of New Life Baptist Church, which meant that we could take these habits and we could take the learning about God's presence being all that we needed, or sort of being the people of his presence. And we could work out what it looked like to be church for the quarter of the population who were never going to access it because of their mental health. So we began a journey that ended up with Renew Wellbeing, which Naomi will tell you more about. But the person it was for at the start was me. I needed these habits, the cup thing, the rhythms of prayer, hobbies. I'd begun to engage in hobbies again to look after myself, but I knew I needed a community that would do that with me. I don't think none of us are an island, and we're told to go off and look after our well-being all on our own, and then we get together and lead jolly services and make each other more busy. Instead, what about if our community, our coming together, was around the habits and rhythms that actually bring us life? What if we led out of our vulnerability and said, I need you to do this with me, folks. I need to be able to pray regularly. I need to meditate on the Psalms, and I need to do some hobbies. I need to sit down and stop trying to fix people. And that was where Renew started. It started me trying to be an honest, authentic, broken, hobbling along leader who was leading a group of people at a time of change. One of the things that happened early on was that I was leading a group of ladies who had asked me to come and do something with them. Because I was the church leader, I must know the answer. Basically, the lady whose house it was at had terminal cancer, and she was a single mom, and she was in her late 30s, little boy, and her mom had come to visit from Wales. Now her mom, now forgive me please if I tread on some toes here, her mom, the lady who was dying, her mom had had enough of being a South Wales Baptist to put her off God for life. Now, I'm not trying to be rude to you at all. There's a very interesting story. She'd been to chapel all her life, and her other daughter had taken her own life, and she just had lost her faith completely. And so she'd had enough of church to put her off God. I know that could be anywhere, but interestingly, it was South Wales. Anyway, we're sitting in this room, and this woman, this older woman, her daughter's there. Her daughter's come to faith, and this older woman is sitting looking at me, and she said, so I've lost one daughter to suicide, and I'm losing another to cancer. Where's your God now? Okay, go on. What'd you say? So I did what I always do, and I went, let's do our meditation. Everybody get your cup. And we all sat there, and I shut my eyes and thought, this is going to be a really long meditation because I've literally got nothing for this poor woman. And the meditation happened to be, He is my stronghold. So we sat there and we were like, He is my stronghold. He is my stronghold. And I thought, Lord, I've still got, I don't know, nothing. I opened my eyes, and I am not kidding you. I looked across the room. The tears were running down her face. And she said, He's my stronghold, Ruth. She ran across the room, she had get hold of me, and I don't know what happened in that moment, but God spoke for himself. Where what I would have said might have put her off him, where church had put her off God, he can speak for himself. All the way through when her daughter did sadly die, and all the way through that funeral that I took, and going on into now, I think, she will still say he's my stronghold. Some sort of encounter with God is happening in these quiet spaces where it's okay not to be okay, that I've not seen happen before. And it's happening over and over again. And it's slow miracle, not fast. And with people who are struggling with their mental and emotional health, the encounter with God is deep and profound and long-term and very slow. And yet these habits and rhythms that I learned the hard way have become the habits and rhythms of a movement. Listening to Naomi doing the prayer this morning it made me really cry actually, because I only did that 12 years ago because I couldn't live any other way. That became my morning prayer because I didn't have any other words. And then I thought, I'm going to do it again tomorrow. And I'm going to share it with some more people. And 5 years ago, when we set up Renew 37 here in Nottingham, which was basically my response to, I need to do this and I need to do it with some people. And there's lots of people who I think could do with this. Will you come and join us? We'll have a space where it's okay not to be okay. It'll be on the high street. Anyone can come. No proselytizing. Bring a hobby, share a hobby, any faith and none. And here's the prayer space. You can join in if you want to, but I'm going to need to pray. I'm going to need to pray at various intervals. I'm going to need a place to be quiet and get away from you sometimes. And I'm going to need a place to keep to my rhythms of prayer. You can join me if you'd like to. And people did like to. And some people came to faith. And then that one place became several places, and other people began to ask. And then I had to give up the day job 3 years ago and set up Renew Wellbeing as a little charity, because lots of churches were saying, hang on, how are you doing this? Because this seems simple enough and we might be able to do it. And so being present, showing up, being prayerful, praying, making it available to anyone, and being in partnership with mental health services, that was another thing that happened right from the start, was we partnered with those people where we could signpost out and go, I'm sorry, all we've got is the kettle on, some hobbies going on and some prayer. If you need more than that, let's find you some help. Let's find where that can be. So this is prevention. This is honest. This is about living out of your own well-being. And I suppose what I'm saying to you as leaders is, whether you do Renew Wellbeing or not is neither here nor there. But if you don't know what well-being looks like for you, then you will lead people not in well-being, but in the opposite of it. If you don't know what the habits and rhythms of well-being look like, you will constantly be driven by the next shiny thing, by the next missional adventure. We call them missional adventures, but if we go at them without well-being, without shalom, which is what I think is a good definition of that word, Corinne's going to bring us a bit of stuff on that in a moment. Your well-being, your habits, what you believe the gospel has to say about well-being, that's what will shape and form a community. And I have never been more convinced than I am right now that this is the place for the church right now. In this nation, in our nation, there is a cry coming from people that's saying, please teach us to pray, teach us what well-being looks like, give us a bigger story. The cup is empty, tell us about the hands. And if it doesn't look like something in practice and we're just saying, oh, God really loves you and he answers prayer, people need to know what that looks like. I am telling you, I'm finding loads of people who want to pray. They want to pray. They just don't necessarily want what we're offering as church, but they do want God. I think if we simplify what it means to approach him, then his shalom, we can settle into it together. I think what we've come up with at Renew Wellbeing is not rocket science. You probably want something a bit more shiny and exciting where people actually get fixed. It's a way of being, actually. It's a way of showing up. It's a way of living honestly within your own skin and then being that community within your community, of being the heartbeat of well-being. We believe this can happen in any church or community space or cafe. It doesn't actually matter what the space is. What matters is that together we are practicing the presence of God in a way that brings well-being. So I'm going to leave it at that, but I just commend to you this little habit with the cup. And I just want to leave you with this this poem I wrote. I wrote this before we set up Renew 37. It's called 37, by the way, because it's 37 Abbey Road, and Psalm 37 says, do not fret, do not fret, do not fret. And it's been a great game until recently, where Renew 233 and Renew 261 have just set up. And I think we've gone a bit too far from what it started with. I don't know what's going on anymore. But what's happening is, I've been going into lockdown, we had 50 centres. During lockdown, we put all our training online. And so we've now got 150 churches we're working with. And Naomi's just beginning a work across South Wales that I'm really excited to see happening, and pray that you will join in with it, because I do believe it'll be good for your well-being too. But here's a little poem as I hand over to Corinne, who's going to give us some actual stuff about what well-being really is, theologically soundly. Corinne, here's my poem. I can see a place where all are welcome, where family is beyond blood, where those who thought they had the least to say, least notice taken, become most loved, most honoured. A place where all seek God, all seek and find his beautiful presence and become viral carriers infected with his sweet love and grace. A place where we all acknowledge ourselves as broken and no labels are necessary other than human and loved. Where sin is acknowledged and left behind and sadness is allowed to be what it is for as long as it needs to be. Where honesty is the native tongue and being transcends doing. Where sitting quietly with yourself and God is valued as much as busying yourself with others. And where the other is seen through the eyes of the God who made them and are loved with his compassion. where simplicity, gentleness, and joy live, and God is not privatized into meetings, where we become, all of us, young and old, co-creators with him, of small things of beauty and large systems of justice, of little works of art and big works of courage, a place to dream, to imagine, to dare, a place to rest and pause and be, a lump of yeast of kingdom life carrying the DNA of Christ to every home and workplace, a quiet, shared place where it's okay not to be okay, and where one place becomes many places, a web of well-being across the nations. I can see a place. So Lord, I pray over this day, looking at well-being, that it wouldn't just be more words for those of us who practice words a lot, but that this would look like something in our lives. God of Shalom, God of well-being, please come and teach us how to pray, how to be present, how to partner, so we see well-being renewed across South Wales, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen.
How deep the Father's love for us, how vast beyond all measure, that He should give His only Son to make a richest treasure. How great the pain of searing loss! The Father turns His face away, as wounds which mar the chosen one bring many sons to glory. Behold the man upon the cross, my sin upon His shoulders. Ashamed, I hear my mocking voice call out among the scoffers. It was my sin give his own.